In this video, we're going to take a look at how CabinetPartsPro handles material or sheet sizes and different material for the cabinet components. We're mainly going to focus on the material sizing and how it's able to track and use waste material or different X, Y, or length and width material. So we're going to first start off with just entering in a basic wall cabinet, and that's the cabinet that we're going to work throughout this video. We're just going to change a few settings about it. So I'm just going to enter in a new cabinet. I'm going to first take a look at how it handles default material. I've not handled any other material size other than the default material sheet size found within the settings in nesting settings. Then on the nesting tab, we could see that the default material is 48 by 96. So a standard 4 by 8 sheet. Going to close the nesting settings and click Calculate Nest. We could see that this has now been nested and showing in the upper left here that our material is 0.75 plywood and then default. The default is referring to that it is using the default sheet size that is found in the settings. So I'm just going to close the settings here and enter in so we have more than one sheet to be able to view, entering in a quantity of 3. Going to calculate and nest this as well. And again, we're seeing that the plywood default across all 3 sheets. Now, if we had material that our backs were on 1/4 inch material or our backs was 1/4 inch, so I'm going to go in and modify the cabinet to have 1/4 inch material for the backs. There's 1/4 inch. I'm going to close the settings. We will calculate this. So we can also now see that we are still on 3 sheets, but we have a separation of 1/4 inch material that's plywood default. Now what is showing up in this name here is what shows up in the main settings for that cabinet. So again, I'm going to change the material settings for the entered cabinet and take a look at the material, and we can see our thickness is the thickness of the material and the type is plywood. So again, I'm going to change this back to 0.75. And now we're going to take a look at how we use material that is of different sizes. So say if for this job or this particular material we have some scrap pieces laying around, maybe a couple pieces that are 24 inches by 96 inches, and we want to be able to use those or make use of those. To be able to do that, we need to modify a materials file or a sheets text file. To be able to find that, if you go to your Start menu, Cabinet Parts Pro, and then User Data folder. Inside of this folder, you will find a text file named Sheets. Opening this file up is already has a basic sheets listed here. So we have some 1/4 inch or 3/4 inch material that's plywood and 1/4 inch material. Notice there is a space in between each one, and we have no values in any of these settings. So the name here is showing up just the same way that it shows up in the material settings for that cabinet. So this is the thickness, and then this is the type. So in this case, we are using 3/4 inch plywood, and we want to have and make usage of, say we have 2 sheets that are 24 by 96 or 96 by 24, so it's always X and Y. So we have 2 sheets. I'm going to separate it by a comma, 96 by 24, and our last value here is kind of a priority setting. a lower value means that we are going to use this material first. Then it will move on to the next list. So saving this file, we're going to see how this plays out. I'm not going to recalculate the cabinet. I'm just going to go back into the part nester and click nest. We can now see that the first two sheets of this material is 96 by 24, and it is making use of that. There is a little bit of things that happen a little bit on the first sheet. Sometimes we can see that this is quite large, even though it is showing a 9624. Hovering your mouse over top of the sheet, we can see the numbers in the bottom right there changing. And notice that we are nested within the 9624 sheet size. And moving this part around, you can see it does not allow us to drag out beyond that sheet size. So that allows us to be able to use different material within the same job or that same thickness. We could add more to that list by going back to that text file and say we also have a couple sheets of material, or one sheet that is 48 by 30, and we want to use that one first. So I'm going to change the priority of both of those. We'll save that file, coming back into the nesting and reclick or recalculate the nesting. So notice that it now put that 48 by 30 inch piece on there first. Then we move to the 9624, another 9624, and now we've moved into the default sheets, meaning that we did not have enough material in our text file to continue on using that, so it just kind of refers back to the default material size. So now we're going to take a look at how we're able to change material types or thicknesses again. So going back into the change settings, going to change the material for the backs back to a 1/4 inch material. When I calculate and nest this, we are going to see that we have our backs on 1/4 inch plywood that is the default material. So that's the 9648 that we found in the main settings. Then we move on to our 3/4 inch plywood, the 4830 sheet that we have in our text file, the two 9624, and then back to a default 9648 material, just because we do not have any more in that list. So if we wanted to, we could always put in as our default material thickness here that we always have, 30 sheets or 200 sheets or whatever number, 100 sheets, and we always want to default back to not what is in the main settings, but default back to this value here. I'm going to set the priority of this one to a 2 or a 3, just so we know that we're going to use those sheets last. We'll re-nest. And now we could see that we are not using any default material for the 3/4 inch thickness. It is pulling the 9648 from our main text file list, but we are still using the default material for the backs. Now say if for our backs or a 1/4 inch plywood that it doesn't come in 9648, it comes in 60 by 60 inch sheets. We can modify that and use that material by going into our material list for our 1/4 inch plywood for our backs. I'm just going to say that I have 100 sheets of these because that's going to kind of be the default material. I'm not tracking and using any waste material here. I'm going to enter in a value of 60 inches by 60, and I always want to use those first. File, save. I'm going to come back into Renest. Now we'll see that it doesn't quite look right or work out right. And the reason for this is the default material settings has to be set up to be the largest size in X or Y of the material that is in our list. So in this case, we have our largest X is 96 and our largest Y is 60. So our default material settings needs to be 60 for the width and 96 for the length. And just renest so we could see how it all scales out. We now have material that is 1/4 inch, 60 by 60 for our backs. And making use of our material usage in the 9648. So we're going to take a look at one more feature that we have, and that is being able to track and cut waste. So going back into our file here, I'm going to take out the scrap material usage. So we are only going to be using 9648 for our 3/4 inch plywood and 60 by 60 for our 1/4 inch material. So going File, Save to this text file, coming back into CabinetPartsPro, we're going to take a look at how we could track waste material. So going into our nesting settings, we have an option now to be able to track waste. So apologize that we have to go into the nesting to be able to see this. So going into the settings here, we now have an option or a checkbox to calculate and cut waste. So putting a checkbox here is going to automatically, kind of give us an outline of where our waste material will be. And it also gives us a text box here to enter in the square inches of waste that we would like to keep. So in this case, I have 400 inches or square inches, meaning that it is going to cut a rectangle or a square out of any waste that is greater than 400 square inches. And we'll see how this plays out. So clicking Calculate Nest after making that changes, we will now see on our material usage, and again, our first sheet, we don't see it here because we are 9648 and it is showing the sheet size a little bit larger than that, but notice again, lower left, we are 9648. So we do have material the 1/4 inch. We see this X material here that is showing the waste, and that waste will end up being cut out in the NC file and being cut. So we're able to track and calculate that waste, and it makes it a little bit easier to clean up and make organization of waste usage. To see how that works, just going to come into the toolpaths and create the NC file. Give it a name of material 3. Taking a look at our material list folder, so material 3. Inside of this folder, it also created our 3 NC files along with a couple extra files here. So the info file is what's going to tell us about each sheet. So double clicking this text file to open it up. we could see that on sheet number 1, it is a 3/4 inch material using the 9648 with a total of 12 parts on that sheet. And the waste is, actually we have no waste. The second sheet is the same material, 9648. There are 6 parts on that sheet, and we have one waste that is 96 by 22. And again, on sheet number 3, it is showing us another waste piece of 30 by 30. So hopefully this is a video kind of shows and explains how to use different material types, also how to make usage of some of our larger waste material that we might have, or scrap material. We could always, in this info file that is created, it is created in such a way that it is able to be copied and pasted directly from our info file into our text file. So we could see that we have one piece that is 30 by 30. So we could always come in here, copy that section there, and add it to our 1/4 inch material. And in this case, I'm going to say bring that down to 0. In this case, it's actually not going to use that size, just because there isn't any parts that are going to fit on that material size sheet. We're still, oh, look at that, I was wrong. It did use up our 30 by 30 sheet. And then it's our 60 by 60, and also gave us another larger waste material. And then our 9648, again with our waste material there. So that is a conclusion of being able to use different size thickness material and make usage of waste or scrap material or different size material within the same job.